So, the way that we normally talk about China's rise and China's engagement in the world, as we sort of discussed before, is to find one little label for China and then fit China into that. You're actually taking on a really tough challenge in your argument to force people to resist that kind of reductionism. You're saying the world needs China, China needs the world. We're interdependent. There are serious issues that promote competition. There's an ideological dimension to this that didn't exist before. And yet cooperation is also possible at times. Now, I think the temptation in the IR sphere is, it's too complicated. We need just, a simpler kind of frenemy or some kind of formulation, friends and enemies. We need to put a cap on it and give it one characterization that fits all circumstances. But the reality is, in our other relationships, in our interpersonal relationships, we're actually very comfortable and at home with the idea that, with my classmate so-and-so, sometimes we're competitors and sometimes we're together. One day in sports, we'll be on the same team. The next day, we'll be on the next team, on the same team and different team, right? So, the reality of the world we live in is that we're constantly cooperating and competing with the same people and same small groups of people. But for some reason, at the international level, we kind of tend towards reductionism and we want a simpler answer. How are we going to interact with China? And it needs to be the same for all circumstances. How do you combat that? How are you convincing people to take your argument seriously? It's too complicated.
Well, it is complicated. So is China. So are issues like climate change. But putting that aside, I actually do have I think it is much simpler in some ways. One thing to say specifically, which I'll come to in a second, but one thing to say about, don't we just compete, cooperate in the course of our daily lives? Yes. And in respect to China, this is, certainly familiar to diplomats from major countries, multinational companies who have been working in China for a long time. Here's the difference, though. That's less familiar. The idea of competing in some areas, cooperating in others, not as familiar to universities, not as familiar to smaller countries that nonetheless, just given China's role in the world, have a strong, trade or other ties with China. And at the same time, China's ability to exert pressure or to make life somewhat miserable on that broader set of actors has increased. So the need to kind of think about and understand how you do cooperation, sometimes competition, others, is greater than it ever has been before. The other thing I would say, which is really kind of the simplest form of the argument, is look, no matter what your angle on China is, if it's trade, if it's investment, if it's Taiwan, if it's human rights, those issues are being transformed by developments in sustainability and technology. And you got to shift your focus to those two issue areas. They have profound implications for every other dimension of China's relationship with the world. So that's really the argument that I want to advance, is that we have to rethink China's role in the world, principally in terms of developments in those two issue areas.